Max Verstappen and Red Bull are going to win the 2024 F1 World Championship. There, the secret is out. The preseason testing is done, and the key takeaway from the 3 days of running is that Max Verstappen and Red Bull are going to dominate this season as well. Now, the Formula 1 season begins this weekend in Bahrain, where we'll have the first race of the season. And since we are already done with the preseason test, there are quite a few key takeaways, and most importantly, this I feel is the perfect time for me to give my predictions. Now, one of the predictions is already given. Max Verstappen and Red Bull are going to win both the drivers and constructors championship. However, there's a lot more to talk about. Now, the video will be divided into two parts. The first is the pecking order, where I'll take a look at how the 10 teams stack up after the preseason test. Then I'll share my top 10 predictions for the 2024 F1 season. Spoiler alert, one of them is Max Verstappen and Red Bull winning the 2024 F1 World Championship. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. Now, before I proceed, just one housekeeping note, just hit that like button, and ultimately if you like the video, do subscribe and help the channel grow. Now, first of all, let's talk about the pecking order. Now, talking about the pecking order, what I've done is I've divided the 10 teams into 4 different tiers. Now, when I talk about tiers, every tier will have a cluster of teams that are somewhat similar in performance, and there is maybe a difference of a tenth or two, and hence they can be competitive against each other, and drivers would make a difference. So yes, let's begin. Let's take a look. First of all, I have tier 1. Now in tier 1, I have only Red Bull because it does appear that the team is a bit standalone. It is at the front and there's no one that is competitive. For now, I'm keeping Red Bull alone at the front, and the gap that Red Bull might have. For now, I'll reserve my judgment on that, but I think it's safe to say that Red Bull is a standalone frontrunner at this stage. Next up, we have tier 2. And in tier 2, the first team that I have put is Ferrari. Now in my view, whatever I have seen, Ferrari has been the second most impressive car in terms of how much the car has been pushed, how much performance it has shown. Again, I don't expect Ferrari to have an outright advantage over the other teams in tier 2, but at least for now, at least for Bahrain, I think it would be the one that would be closest to Red Bull. And if there is anyone who could challenge Max, hopefully, it might be Charles Leclerc. At number 3, I have put Mercedes. Now, the team didn't really show the outright pace because it never really did a low fuel run as such. The team wasn't really focusing on that part. Having said that, the long run was impressive. Again, how good or bad, I'm not entirely sure, but for now, I'll place Mercedes at 3rd. Now, in 4th, I have placed McLaren because the car looks good. There's no doubt about it. The final day long run that Oscar Piastri did, the race pace was not that good. There are still some doubts around where McLaren finds itself because it has faced a few reliability issues. So for now, I'm keeping it at P4. In P5, I have Aston Martin. Now, honestly, when this preseason test started, I was arguably most impressed by Aston Martin because it was quick to get down to the business, and it was very early when Fernando Alonso started pushing the car on the very first day. However, as time has passed, the second and third day have truly unraveled. You could see that maybe Aston is not necessarily at the front of the chasing pack, just like it was last season. Now, having said that, when I'm talking about tier 2, I don't expect any of these 4 teams to be outright ahead of the other team. And I feel that there will be drivers who would be juggling positions in these 4 teams because the gap would be around a 10th or 2, roughly around that. And when you have teams this close to each other, you tend to see a mix and match of things. So don't be surprised if Lewis Hamilton is on podium, or probably a Lando Norris is on podium in Bahrain. It could happen. Next up in tier 3, I have put Racing Bulls. Now, the reason why I have put Racing Bulls in tier 3 is because I don't think there is any other team that comes close. The Racing Bulls is in a position that Alpine somewhat found itself in last season, where it was not part of the front running group and it was not part of the back markers or the last 4 teams. And this season, it does appear that for now at least, Racing Bulls is somewhere in the middle, where I don't think it has the outright pace to compete with the top 5, but at the same time, it does appear that the car is good enough to keep the bottom 4 teams at bay. So that's where they find themselves, and to be honest, it's an improvement from where the team was last season. It will be a consistent points contender, and that's still an improvement compared to where the team tended to find itself in the last few years. Now, after Racing Bulls, we have the final 4 teams. Now, in the final tier 4, I have the last 4 teams, and in T7, I'm keeping Sauber. The reason why I'm keeping Sauber is because, well, to an extent, the team has shown some level of improvement in terms of car performance. The design is very aggressive, and you could see a lot of Red Bull inspiration there. So just based on that, I'm keeping at least in terms of pace, Saber or Stake F1, whatever it is called, at P7. In P8, I'm keeping Williams. The reason behind it is because it does appear that the team has gone in a different direction and the car is expected to be more rounded. For now, we haven't truly seen the kind of pace that Williams would have, so there's still a bit of a question mark on that front. Having said that, it might be a car that is now not having a characteristic of being ridiculously good in a straight line and then struggling all the way. That might not be the case anymore. But again, let's wait and watch how it pans out. In P9, I have Alpine. The car does not look good on track, and according to the German media, whatever I've seen, it's overweight. There's nothing good about the car apparently, and there are actually some people who might be on their way out of the team because of the kind of disaster that the car is looking right now. The team has been a complete joke, to be honest, ever since it got rid of Otmar and Alan Permain. I still find it hard to understand that this is the route that the team took. Better not to invest too much time on Alpine, it's not worth it. Finally, in P10, I have Haas. Now again, this is a bit of a wild card because always keep one thing in mind: if a Ferrari is doing well, Haas, a team that is in very close collaboration with Ferrari, it tends to do well as well in those circumstances. Now, whatever sounds the team has made, they've not been that positive. On track, maybe there is a certain level of performance, and if you take the view, and if you even take a look at the lap times that Hülkenberg did in his long run, you could see that the team has already cured to an extent the long run race pace. It's the tire degradation is not as much of an issue right now, but still overall, at least for now, I'm not too confident about Haas, so I'm keeping it at 10th. Now finally, to conclude, when I'm talking about the tier 4, now these 4 teams, take it with a pinch of salt because I feel the drivers are going to make the most difference in these 4 cases. So you might expect drivers like Alex Albon, to an extent Nico Hülkenberg, Ocon, Gasly, all of them to make a difference and maybe help propel these teams forward, maybe snatch a point or two as well in Bahrain. Again, let's see. For now, this is how I perceive the pecking order to be heading into Bahrain. Now let's take a look at the predictions for the 2024 F1 season. Now first of all, the first prediction has already been shared. Now in my view, Max Verstappen and Red Bull are going to win the World Championship. I don't really have much of a doubt. The problem is, it's not only about the team having the best car, it's the fact that all round the team seems to be in... It is ticking every box. You really don't have that many weaknesses, at least for now. Again, the Christian Horner issue, it might play a role, but it will play a role in the long term. At least for now, whatever system that he has put in place, it will keep the team floating for the next 2 seasons at least. So yeah, in my view, I hope there is a title battle this season, but looking at how the preseason testing has gone and the kind of scope there is with the new Red Bull car concept, I'm not too confident, and I think we are looking at another championship for Max Verstappen in 2024. Now next up, I don't think that 2024 will be as dominant as 2023. The reason behind that is I still feel that the law of diminishing returns, it's going to start playing a role, because when you're in the 3rd year of regulations, there is a certain level of performance that you can extract from that particular rule set. And by the 3rd year, when you're talking about the regulations where the regulations are more prescriptive than anything, then at least in my view, I feel that there is a possibility that the grid will start shrinking. When that happens, I feel there will be opportunities for other teams to start winning. I do think Max will win the title and Red Bull will as well, but there is going to be a bit more competition. It won't be a case where we see 21 wins out of 22 races for Red Bull. I don't see that happening again. Now number 3, I predict Sergio Perez losing his seat to Daniel Ricciardo. Now one of the reasons why I feel more confident now, well, it is due to Ricciardo's demeanor inside the car and out of it during the 3 days of preseason tests. He's got his mojo back. Now again, maybe I'm doing armchair quarterbacking. I might be wrong, but it does appear that he's finally getting back to his groove. He's more confident now, and that is ultimately, in terms of upper bound limit, I think he always has the edge over Yuki, and that's going to become more evident this season. On the other hand, Sergio is already struggling compared to Max, and such a huge gulf in the performance between the two drivers is something that is not going to be acceptable this time around. Now, a slightly more spicy prediction: I feel there will be 7 teams that will score a podium this season. Now, 2023 was a very dominant year for Red Bull. Having said that, there were 6 different teams that scored a podium last season. Yes, the top 6 teams, all of them scored a podium. This time around, I'm predicting there will be 7 different teams that will score a podium. Which 7 teams? Again, the top 5 teams, I think all of them will have at least one podium. I do think Racing Bulls will snatch a podium here and there. I feel there might be a Daniel Ricciardo special coming up. I also think Alpine is going to secure a podium somehow. I have a feeling that maybe the team is able to recover decently. And I think because the entire field is shrinking in terms of gaps between the teams, one of the teams is going to have this freak weekend that is going to help them score a podium. So yeah, for 2024, I think there will be 7 teams that are going to score a podium. Next up, I have George Russell and Lewis Hamilton will have a few flashpoints. Now, George and Lewis, they are at a very precarious stage in Mercedes because Lewis is on his way out and George is desperate to beat Lewis this season, because if he does not do that, it does not bode well for him and the perception that many will have of him as a driver. And when that happens, and when you have 2 drivers that are very close to each other and they will more or less be fighting for podiums, there's going to be a few flashpoints. We already saw the 2 collide, I think, thrice last year. We might see a few happen this time around, and this time around, I don't think even Lewis or George is going to hold back. And we're in for a spicy season, at least if we follow the Mercedes battle between the 2 drivers. Next up, this is slightly conservative, but I think there will be at least 3 teams that will win a race this season. Now, last year we had only 2 teams win a race because Red Bull won almost all the races except one in Singapore, which was won by Ferrari. This time around, I feel McLaren might win a race. I have an expectation that it could do that. I think Ferrari will do it. I think maybe Mercedes also has an opportunity to do that. Lewis will be very motivated to do that as he, ends his journey with the team. So yeah, I think there could be a case of 4 teams winning, but at least I think there will be 3 that could do it. So yeah, for now I'm backing at least 3 teams to win a race this season. Now at number 7, I have the racing will suffer this year and it will get worse. This was something I really wanted to keep an eye on during the preseason test, but I really didn't get any definitive answer to this. The issue with these cars is that with more and more development on the front wing, on the body, what has happened is the kind of aero wash that they were trying to avoid, the turbulence that these cars would generate that could affect the cars that are following, it is going to get back to the levels of 2021 and before that. So yeah, that is a question that might be asked if we end up having the scenario. I do feel we might, because the kind of development that has been there on these front wings, it's extensive, and I think they will have an impact. Next up in number 8, I have, Ferrari will beat Mercedes in the championship. Now, last season Ferrari lost out to Mercedes in the last race. In 2022, Ferrari beat Mercedes in the last race. This time around, I do think Ferrari seems to be a more settled unit. It was a bit unsettled last season. It probably, maybe overall had a better car than Mercedes. This year, Ferrari is starting from a much better baseline. At least it seems like it. And when you have a team that is actually slowly, systematically improving under Fred Vasseur, I feel Ferrari might have the edge overall. Plus at Mercedes, I think there will be fireworks and we might see a few counterproductive actions by the 2 drivers. Now in number 9, I think Charles Leclerc will finish 2nd in the championship. I do think that not only does Ferrari have a good baseline, I feel Charles grew up a bit last season under Fred Vasseur, and there seems to be a bit more planned approach by Ferrari where Charles is starting to get the nod within the team as well. When that happens, you see a driver starting to blossom. I think that will happen with Charles as well. He will have a more calm approach, something that he did not have in 2023. So yes, I do think that is going to play a role. Again, there will be contenders. There will be a contender like Lando Norris, Oscar, Lewis. But I feel Charles is going to beat all of them and finish 2nd in the championship. Now finally, number 10, I have, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri is going to turn into a rivalry. Now, Lando is a brilliant driver and he has accomplished himself and placed him in the leadership role in McLaren. There's no doubt about it. He is looked at as that kind of a driver. Having said that, Oscar is no chump. He's not a dummy. He's someone who has arguably one of the more accomplished junior CVs from the drivers that have actually graduated to Formula 1. And even last season, he showed that his peaks can match Norris. With a season of driving under him, Oscar is someone who could learn quickly. could create a scenario where he challenges Norris on a more consistent basis and hence ends up putting the team in a situation where both drivers end up fighting for the same turf. When that happens, a rivalry is created, and I won't be surprised if one is created at McLaren as well. So yeah, I feel the inception of rivalry between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri will be there this season. And with that, we are done with the top 10 predictions and the pecking order predictions for the 2024 F1 season. What are your views? What are your predictions? Do share them in the comment section. Thanks for watching and see you next time.